flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Mikola. And I have never known defeat.
Malenia, the Severed, the one-armed Valkyrie, the goddess of Ra, known by many across the lands between. Daughter to Radagon and Queen Marika, twin to Mikola the Kind, Malenia is a warrior, a demigod, an Empyrean. But much like her brother, she is cursed with something horrifying. So, let's dive into the lore and history of Elden Ring's undefeated swordswoman, Malenia, Blade of Mikola. As I mentioned before, she was born alongside her elder twin brother, Mikola, to Queen Marika and Radagon of the Golden Order. Both Mikola and Malenia were Empyreans, meaning they could potentially surpass their mother and rule a new age, ascending to godhood. Unfortunately for the twins, they were both born afflicted, cursed. Malenia was born with a vicious plague that would cause her to lose some of her limbs as well as her sight. That plague was known as the Scarlet Rot. Scarlet Rot is known like an old legend in the lands between. It's a vile, terrifying sickness that corrupts and eats away at all life it crosses. It deforms men and beasts alike. It eats away at their bodies and minds, driving them to the depths of madness. Despite its horrifying effects, some worship the Scarlet Rot as a god, with some putting Malenia at the head of it all. The demigod, being afflicted since birth, has felt its effects ever since, decaying her body to a point of losing her limbs. Her brother Mikola would assist her in trying to keep its effects under control by creating an unalloyed gold needle, which would help suppress the Rot's call. This, combined with her strong will, pride, and dignity, would allow her to go on to become a mighty warrior. At some stage in her life, Malenia would cross paths with a blind swordsman who had long ago sealed away an outer god of Ra. The swordsman, seeing her strong sense of willpower, would take her on as a student and become her master. He trained her in the ways of the blade, which allowed her to build pillars of strength and fighting skill. Eventually, she would go on to be a fighter with unmatched skill. Due to her great strength and demigod status, she would attract loyal servants such as her clean rot knights, who vowed to stand by her until, inevitably, they would succumb to the Scarlet Rot. Their acceptance of this fate made them some of the fiercest warriors in the lands between. She would attract many worshippers who believed Malenia to be their goddess. Despite being born into Ra and needing prosthetics to fight, Malenia would become one of the most powerful warriors in the lands. Later on down the line, an event would happen that would drive Queen Marika to the brink, and she would shatter the Elden Ring. Both Mikola and Malenia would claim shards of the broken Elden Ring. By this point, Marika had already instructed all of her demigod children to fight for the positions of Elden Lord and that of Godhood. Many battles would be fought during the War of the Demigods, which occurred shortly after the Shattering, in which Malenia would lead her army south of the Halig Tree. She won many a battle, and even humbled shard bearer Godric the Grafted, who would lick her boots and grovel for mercy after insulting her. After many more battles, the last two standing demigods would encounter each other.
The conqueror of the stars, General Radahn. And the blade of Mikkel and Malenia the Seventh. These two were the mightiest to remain, and locked horns in combat.
Malenia, Blade of Mikkel, General Radahn. Their armies would clash as the two demigods would duel in the Caelid Wilds. The two would match each other in strength and tenacity. During the battle with Radahn, Malenia would bloom for the first time. Her technique, Scarlet Aeonia, would be unleashed on both Radahn and the Caelid Wilds. The rot would devastate the area, leaving it a rotting wasteland. And it would have horrifying effects on the general. It would cause Radahn to rapidly lose his mind, and it would eat away at his body. He would be cursed to wander the battlefield as a mindless beast, feasting on the bodies of the fallen as well as his own soldiers. Malenia herself would not be unscathed though. Unleashing her scarlet rot for the first time would take a toll on her body, leaving her in a coma. She was rescued by one of her clean rot knights, Finlay, who would carry Malenia all the way back to the Halig tree to await the rebirth of Mikkel, who had cocooned himself within the tree to try and rid himself of his own curse. But in her absence, Mikkel and his cocoon would be ripped from the tree and kidnapped by Mohg, the Lord of Blood, before he could emerge. As she slept, the scarlet rot would seep into the Halig tree and begin to infect it. Upon her blooming in Caelid, she would inadvertently cause the birth of the Kindred of Rot, who see her as their goddess and would hope to cause Malenia to bloom again, so she could bring about a new age of Rot. Ultimately, Malenia's coma is interrupted by the Tarnished, where she would bloom once again, becoming a goddess. A true goddess. A goddess of Rot. Her tale would come to an end upon finally finding someone who could best her in combat. Malenia is a fascinating character, and I will be discussing some spoilers here for both the main game and Shadow of the Earth Tree, so there's a warning. Malenia is my favourite fight in Elden Ring, not only because I think she is just really cool, but because her fight is really fun. It feels like it's a bit unfair at first, but once you finally get a grasp on her moveset and you work at the timings for your dodge, it's a really fun fight. But her character is also really sad. She starts off her life born into a family as a demigod, to a mother who showed no love or empathy for her children. Well, bar one. Born cursed alongside her twin brother Mikkel, the two only had themselves. Mikkel would try his best to help cure them from their curses, and would also look after Malenia's prosthetics. Although she had the golden needle that would help fight the call of the Scarlet Rot, it had already taken so much from her. Her arm, her legs, her eyes. Despite this, she held strong, and took pride in her skill as a warrior. After the shattering though, she would lead her army to fight in the War of the Demigods. But why? Why did she go to fight? The Erd Tree was unable to cure them of their curses. Malenia also did not take Godric's Great Ruin after defeating him, so she had no interest. No interest in becoming ruler of the land, becoming a god. So why did Malenia go to fight? I personally think Malenia was either under the charm of her brother, or maybe she knew of his plan. Malenia knew Miquella wanted to cure the two of them and bring Godwyn back. And maybe that's why she went to fight Radahn. Him holding the stars back halts the fate of Miquella, meaning his goals can never come to fruition. Or maybe Miquella just needed Malenia to kill him for his plan to ascend to godhood. And this is where things get dicey. I've seen a lot of discussion around Reddit and Steam forums and Twitter about why Malenia goes to fight in the first place. I've seen people talking about how they retcon that during the fight with Radahn and Malenia says promised consort to Radahn. Now the reason why people say this is retcon is because we only really get to see a little bit of this in the cinematic for Elden Ring. There's no mention of it throughout the game or anything like that, but we can see during the cinematic when Malenia does stab into Radahn, she does mutter something. I know there was a big thing that the reason Malenia went to fight Radahn was because she thought it was him who had kidnapped Miquella. And maybe there's even the question as to, was Malenia doing this all of her own will, or was she too under the charm of Miquella? We know that Miquella didn't put himself in his cocoon until after the battle with Radahn. So that puts the whole theory of Radahn kidnapping Miquella kind of out the window. We know this because Freya, one of Radahn's soldiers, was stricken by scarlet rot in the swamp of Ionia. She was basically ready to die until Miquella found her. Miquella would gently put his lips to a hideous scarlet wound and it would ultimately heal her. And just talking about the line that Malenia would have said to Radahn during the battle when she bloomed, Radahn heard a murmur in his ear, "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." Which leads us to believe that Malenia did know what Miquella's plan was. But again, she could have maybe been under his charm and was doing this against her own will. I could go on forever about this. I have so many theories I'd like to talk about as to why Malenia did what she did and the extent of Miquella's involvement. This is sort of why I feel like Shadow of the Erd Tree did a little bit of damage to the character of Malenia. As I mentioned before, Miquella and Malenia were born as twins and they were both cursed. They only really had themselves, and it felt like that until Shadow of the Erd Tree. It felt like Malenia was giving everything to Miquella and Miquella was throwing her aside. It really feels like Miquella discarded her the moment he got what he wanted. It feels like he needed someone to do his dirty work, the heavy lifting. He needed a blade, and Malenia was that blade. It feels like at one stage Miquella did love Malenia, but upon him realizing that he couldn't cure his sister, it felt like it wasn't really love for her, but just for someone who was suffering, which was more generalized for Miquella. He cared for all those suffering, and his goal was to ultimately help them. Not by actually making it better, but putting them all under his charm to make them believe it to be so. But this isn't a video on Miquella or the stuff Miquella has done, Miquella's involvement in everyone else's life. This is a video on Malenia. I wish she played a more vital role in Shadow of the Erd Tree and just in the game overall. And I wish the DLC had a bigger impact on the base story as well. I wish there was more choice and a lot more of the endings revolved around the Empyreans. I wish I got to choose if I wanted to side with Miquella. I wish I got to choose whether I wanted to maybe help Malenia. But I'm getting sidetracked and talking a little more than I should for a video about Malenia. But the last thing I'll say is that I feel like there should have been more reference to her. Maybe even a cross that states that Miquella abandons his love for his sister. Something like that. She's by far one of my favourite characters in the game. I love her story and her character design. Her being the only one willing to stand against the strongest of demigods, Radahn, to be the underdog against such a unit, and managing to come out of it faring better than he did is just amazing. I don't want to spark a whole Malenia versus Radahn debate, but I feel like in the end, Malenia would have come out on top. But my ultimate view on it is that they were matched in skill and strength. One of the coolest bosses with some of the sickest moves I've seen. I also really enjoyed finding her. The big lead up to getting to the Halig tree and walking into our boss arena for the first time, realizing it was her I was about to fight, will always be such a good memory, even if I did die immediately. I've really enjoyed her, and I wish she had a bigger impact on the story. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. A little different from the Overwatch story videos, but don't worry, I'll be back. Maybe a little later than sooner, due to the next one having a ton of story behind them. I want to do more Souls content, as it is my favourite genre of games, covering Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and of course Dark Souls. And now with the recent announcement of Elden Ring Night Rain, I think it's a great time to start opening these worlds to more people, and spreading these amazingly written stories. So subscribe for more, and hit that like button to help get them out there. Also, let me know what you want to see next. Maybe another Elden Ring character, moving on to Bloodborne, maybe Dark Souls. If you want to sit here and we can talk about a bunch of theories. I don't know, whatever you guys want to see. I just want to talk about this more. I want to talk about Elden Ring and Soulsborne content in general. But yeah, consider becoming a member on the channel, as it does help me keep these videos going. But if you've made it here, that's already enough. So yeah, this was Malenia, Blade of Miquella. Once upon a time, in the lands between, during the golden age of Queen Marika's divine rule, Godwyn the Golden, Marika's firstborn, the scion of the golden lineage, would be the first of the demigods to fall. But first, to understand why and how this would change the lands between forever, we must understand the events leading up to it. We must go back to the very beginning. This is the story of Godwyn the Golden. Godwyn was the firstborn child of Queen Marika and Godfrey, first Elden Lord. He was admired all across the lands between as a hero and champion of the Erd Tree. Godwyn was a scion of the Golden Lineage, which is the royal bloodline that descended from the union of Lord Godfrey and Queen Marika, in which Godric the Grafted was the final descendant. Ages ago, Leyendell was assaulted by an ancient dragon named Gransax, marking the only time the walls of the royal capital had been breached and infiltrated. This was the beginning of the War of the Ancient Dragons. Godwyn was victorious in a battle against the mighty Fortisax, and afterwards he would earn the dragon's friendship. This friendship led to the end of the war and the establishment of the ancient dragon cult. This cult worshipped dragons and would study their lightning incantations. This was permitted by the Golden Order, with Gravelstone and lightning itself being imbued with gold. Now, we're going to jump to another character. I know this video is about Godwyn, but to understand his story, we must understand part of another. We won't spend too long talking about them, as I wish to make a video on them further down the line. So here we go. Lunar Princess Ranni. Daughter to Rennala and Radagon, and stepsister to Godwyn. Ranni sought to be free of her fate, as a pawn to the Greater Will and the Erd Tree. Since she was an Empyrean, and the Two Fingers had chosen her as Marika's successor, she would devise a plan. A plan to free herself from her Empyrean flesh. Ranni would steal a fragment of the Rune of Death from Maliketh, the Black Blade, and would imbue the rune into the blades of Numen assassins. Ranni would instruct the assassins to kill another individual, while Ranni would slay herself, but only killing her own flesh, while the other would die in soul alone. This would free her from her Empyrean fate and allow her to hide and go against the Two Fingers and the Greater Will. Which brings us back to Godwyn, and what would become known as the Night of Black Knives. On that fateful night, a night of wintry fog, the assassins would sneak their way into the royal capital and carve the half-wheel centipede into the back of Godwyn's body, with the other half being etched into Ranni's. The two demigods would die simultaneously, but in different ways. Ranni in flesh, and Godwyn in soul. The Night of Black Knives was the pivotal turning point for the lands between. It was this event that drove Queen Marika to the brink, that drove her to shatter the Elden Ring. Godwyn was buried at the bottom of the Erd Tree's roots below Leyendell, but since he was lacking a soul, his body was unable to die a true death. Godwyn's body would grow and morph into this vile, unrecognizable cancer that spread all across the lands between. Due to this also, the Rune of Death's influence would spread and sprout deathroot in many places all across the world. The Dragon Fortisax would try fight the death within Godwyn's body, but would ultimately become corrupted. Members of the Dragon Cult would accept his death and would go on to become the Death Knights. The Knights of Castle Sol, as well as kindly Miquella, would work towards achieving an eclipse, one that would return Godwyn's soul to him, but to no avail. Godwyn's body, now living without a soul, infested with death, is growing and infecting the lands between. This aberration is known as the Prince of Death. The deathbed companion, Fia, wishes to bring a new age to the lands between by granting Godwyn a second chance at life. To do this, she would need both half of the wheel centipedes, one from the body of Godwyn and the second from the body of Ranni. The result of their union would be the conceiving of the mending rune of the Prince of Death, which would allow the age of the Duskborn to commence, introducing the principle of life within death into the Golden Order. Now, that's pretty much it for Godwyn and Elden Ring, which is honestly sad, because for such a major character, his involvement in the game itself is pretty minor. It's more so a subplot you can go and discover for yourself if you wish to pursue the Age of Duskborn ending. Even with going through with that ending, you don't get much. It feels like it should revolve a little more around Godwyn and how it was his death that ultimately caused the shattering of the Elden Ring. Now, this leads me to the Shadow of the Erd Tree. So, just like the Malenia video, which you should check out if you haven't already, I will say there'll be some spoilers here. Miquella tried to achieve an eclipse in order to give Godwyn back his soul. And I believe that should have been the end of the DLC, not Radahn. As much as I loved Shadow of the Erdtree, and I thought Radahn was cool, after seeing it for the first time, it weared off pretty quickly. I was okay, it's just Radahn again. This is nothing big. I thought the final battle was very lackluster in terms of story, and just overall as a conclusion. I feel like the DLC lacks any real impact on the main story. It's mainly just a subplot that has no real implication. Unlike, say, the Ring City DLC for Dark Souls 3, it puts a nice bow on everything, wraps everything up, and it is meant to be the very end. Whereas with Shadow of the Erdtree, it is kind of like its own separate thing. It doesn't have really an effect on the main story. It doesn't really change how anything else goes. Because if you go along with the main story and you just become Elden Lord and that's it, you are Elden Lord now. I know it's supposed to be Miquella ascending to godhood to usher in his new age of compassion, but it doesn't really feel like it. It doesn't feel like if that were to happen, there's going to be any implication. Anything will actually happen. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain how I feel about this, but I can't really get it out there, and I'm getting sidetracked. Basically, Radahn being the final end and being the choice for Miquella was really lackluster and underwhelming. Just think, how peak would it have been to rock up to that battlefield, to find a rising eclipse between the Gate of Divinity, and for Godwyn's soul to be returned to him. A character who has only been mentioned in story, told to be this great champion of the Erdtree who defended Leyndell against the ancient dragons. Someone who now is only seen as this grotesque, cancerous aberration in the depths of the Erdtree, underneath the city of Leyndell, infested with death, now standing before you as your foe, backed by the godly power of Miquella. That, to me, would have been 10 times better than showing up and it's just Radahn again. Oh no, call me a Radahn hater all you want. I do really like Radahn, and I like him in base game, I like him in the DLC, but I feel like he's a little bit too hyped up. He's nothing really too special. Again, I do really like him. He's pretty cool, but it just... Godwyn could have been so much more. And I hope going forward with the expansion of the Elden Ring universe, such as Night Rain, I hope we get to see more of him. I wouldn't even mind a prequel game to Elden Ring, done in a similar way to, say, Sekiro, or even just a typical Souls fighting and playstyle. But for now, the only thing that remains of Godwyn is the tale of the Knight of Black Knives and the hideous remains of his body. But I'm going to leave this video here. If you did enjoy, a like would be greatly appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more Elden Ring content as well as Overwatch and various other games. If you want to see more, please do let me know down below on who you would like to see next. I'm thinking Maliketh next, or we might branch it off and talk a little about Dark Souls. Why did I say it like Dark Souls instead of just Dark Souls? I don't know, but yeah, I would like to know if you guys want to see more of this. If you haven't checked out the Malenia video, I could not urge you more to go do that. And if you made it to this part of the video, thank you so much. You've already done so much to support me. But yeah, this has been Godwyn the Golden.
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
Maliketh the Black Blade, one of the most feared people in the Lands Between, Shadowbound Beast to Queen Marika herself. He is capable of destroying the very gods themselves. Despite this, His story is one of pain and betrayal. So let's go take a look at why Maliketh is among the saddest bosses in Elden Ring. It starts with Maliketh being the shadowbound beast of Queen Marika. Shadowbound beasts are these half-beasts that are often tailored to serve Empyreans. Certain Empyreans are granted their own shadow by the Two Fingers, vassals of the Greater Will. Shadowbound beasts are loyal to their Empyrean, but their fate is also determined by their Empyrean. If their Empyrean decides to reject the path the Two Fingers puts them on, the shadow will descend into madness and transcend into a terrible curse known as a baleful shadow. Maliketh was the first of the shadowbound beasts to be named. Before the Golden Order was established, Maliketh fought and defeated the Gloam-Eyed Queen, leader of the Godskin Apostles. Marika ordered him to seal away the Rune of Death, binding it with his blade, causing the true power of the Black Flame to be lost, a power that was capable of slaying gods. When the Rune of Death was removed from the Elden Ring and sealed away, the Golden Order was established, with Marika as its one true god. Due to this, Marika's offspring were granted somewhat of an immortality, with their fated deaths from the Elden Ring being removed. Maliketh was now the keeper of destined death, and there was no demigod who did not fear him. His name eventually gained the meaning Death of the Demigods, as his death-imbued blade had the power to slay them all. The golden age of the Erd Tree was upon them. Golden Order was at its peak, until the most pivotal event would take place. We're back again. The Night of Black Knives. The night in which the lands between and the Golden Order would be changed forever. We've talked about one half of this in the video about Godwyn, so make sure to check that out after this. So let's talk about the other. On the wintry night, Lunar Princess Ranni would steal a fragment of the Rune of Death from Maliketh, and she would forge it into the blades for the Newman assassins. Maliketh responded to this by binding his blade and the Rune of Death sealed within into his own flesh to prevent it ever being stolen again. Soon after this, Marika would shatter the Elden Ring. Something we'll come back to later. Deathroot would spread all across the lands between. Maliketh would then take on the name Gurranq and commit himself to tracking down and devouring the Deathroot in an effort to stop its spread. He would meet someone named Dee, who would help him weed out the Deathroot, and later on, he would ask the Tarnished to do the same. When the Tarnished arrives in crumbling Far Missoula, he encounters Gurranq again to then reveal himself to be Maliketh the Black Blade. And that's where his story ends on a base level. Not much backstory to him, but there is a little bit to talk about here. I mentioned at the start that this was a story of sadness and betrayal. While Maliketh being the shadowbound beast and half-brother of Queen Marika, he was a loyal guardian and servant to Queen Marika and would carry out various tasks for her. Maliketh was given the order to guard the Rune of Death ever since it was plucked from the Elden Ring. That was his sole purpose given by Marika, to stop death returning to the Golden Order and the Elden Ring itself. Now, I'm gonna be talking about theories here, so take it with a grain of salt. On the Night of Black Knives, a lot of stuff happens, and while we know for a fact Ranni was involved, Queen Marika is suspected to have some involvement as well. To what extent, if any, we don't know. When Marika shattered the Elden Ring, everything Maliketh had ever done, everything he endured as a keeper of death, something that seemingly caused him a great deal of suffering, was completely and utterly undone and undermined. He would live in exile, holding on to the Rune of Death for ages, protecting it in the sanctum of Farum Azula alone. His whole purpose was to stop death returning to the Golden Order, and he did this for Marika, only for her to end up shattering the Elden Ring. Now, let me just explain this a little more. In the beginning, when the Golden Order is established and the Rune of Death is plucked, Maliketh is given the task of protecting the Rune of Death and preventing it from returning to the Elden Ring. This was to protect the Golden Order. That was his sole purpose in this moment. And then for Queen Marika to shatter the Elden Ring herself, and with it the Golden Order, it ultimately undermines his task of protecting it in the first place. There is also some speculation that Queen Marika herself planned the Night of Black Knives and wanted to return Destined Death to the Golden Order. There is a lot of stuff that kind of lead into these theories, a lot more than I'm going to talk about here. But Maliketh would see this as a betrayal on Marika's behalf. Talks about this if you kill Geraint in the Bestial Sanctum. If done so, he will say, "Marika, why wouldst thou gull me? Why shatter?" Implying that the shattering of the Elden Ring was a betrayal to him. It's sad to see him give everything he had for Marika, do anything she asked, stand by her, going against anyone who opposed her, just for Marika to toss him aside like he was nothing to her. Even after all this, his loyalty stands to her till the very end. Even after the shattering, even after the end of the Golden Order, he still defends the Rune of Death from us. Perhaps equally saddening is our betrayal to him. After you finish Geraint's questline, he leaves, stating that his only companion now will be his hunger. When you go to fight Maliketh, if the questline is completed, you get a different voice line when you enter the arena.
Tarnished. Why wouldst thou? Why? 'Tis no matter. I hereby vow the distant death shall not be stolen again.
He sounds so betrayed by you and sad about it. Honestly, it hits hard. First Marika, now you. Maliketh isn't inherently evil or malicious intent. He's just standing by the people he's loyal to. Even making friends with the Tarnished just to see the Tarnished turn on him. It's just one of those sad characters that, no matter what, just doesn't get a happy ending. It's just honestly so sad to see a character who is just steadfastly loyal to his cause till the very end get tossed aside as if he never meant anything in the first place. One of my favourite bosses in the game. Such an enjoyable fight and such an insanely cool character with one of the coldest lines in fiction.
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
But that does it for Maliketh. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to talk more about theories in Elden Ring a lot more. Just discuss it, see where it goes, talk about some of my favorite theories, some that I don't think are that great. But I mentioned this in the Soldier 76 video that I'm going to start branching content more out to these sort of Elden Ring videos and maybe just Souls games in general. Break a little more into fantasy, because I feel like that's more so where my personality and interests are now. I'm still a really big fan of Overwatch and I love Overwatch, but I'm heavily burnt out of it and I have no urge to play it. So I want to talk about and make stuff about stuff I enjoy and I'm really passionate about talking, and make stuff that is fun. I don't want to just make stuff to be like, okay, that's Overwatch, put an Overwatch video out there, and it's just, I don't have my whole heart in it. I want to talk about stuff that I enjoy and content that I feel like is fun to make. But if you did enjoy, hit that subscribe button. It does help out quite a bit, and I've made it to this part in the video. Thank you so much. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. This was Maliketh the Black Blade. Queen Marika the Eternal. The center point of Elden Ring's story and the most prominent figure. She is a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring. She has ruled as the divine sovereign of the lands between for many ages. Her influence can be seen and felt across every corner of the lands between. So, sit with me, grab a snack, while I tell you the story of Queen Marika the Eternal. Marika begins her life as a Newman and a shaman from the shaman village in the hinterlands. Her people, the shamans, were looked down on by the Hornsent, who considered their flesh to melt harmoniously with others. They would steal the people of Marika's village to be used exactly for this purpose, as they would slice up persecuted criminals and meld them with the shamans to be stuffed into jars to be reborn as saints. At some point in her life, Marika would be recognized as an Empyrean by the Two Fingers. She was given a shadow-bound beast, her half-brother Maliketh. She would travel to the Gate of Divinity atop Anir Elim. This gate would allow ascension to godhood, and Marika would use it for such. She became a vessel for the Elden Ring, and after this ascension, the Shadow Tree and the Erd Tree would come to be. A new age was ushered over the land, and this was seen as a betrayal by the Hornsent, as Anir Elim and their land would be covered in shadow. Prior to her becoming a god, she would have a run-in with another Empyrean, known as the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Maliketh would battle the Empyrean and emerge as the winner. Seeking to be free of destined death, Marika would remove the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring and use Maliketh as a vessel to seal it away, never allowing it to return. This marks the beginning of the Golden Order. Marika would take the warrior Horalu, or Godfrey, as her consort. He would become the first demigod and the first Elden Lord of the Erd Tree. Later on, Marika would return to the abandoned shaman village for the last time, cut off a braid of her hair, and leave it as an offering to her grandmother. Afterwards, she would bathe the village in the healing light of gold, knowing all too well that there was no one to heal. She would leave, never to return. In the early days of her divine rule, there was not one place that did not oppose the Erd Tree. With the aid of her husband, Marika would wage many wars. First against the giants who dwelled atop the cold, frigid mountains to the north. The giants possessed the Flame of Ruin, a flame that was capable of burning the Erd Tree. In her victory, Marika believed she had slain the fell god of the fire giants, but she would soon come to realize that the Flame of Ruin would never die. In response, she would curse the last of the giants to tend to it for eternity. The mountaintops would be declared as forbidden lands, and the details of the war and what happened would be wiped from history. Marika and Godfrey would rule together and would have 3 children, Godwyn the Golden and the twins, Moog and Morgoth. The twins were born as accursed omens and were kept in the depths below the capital, hidden from everyone. Despite this, Godfrey and his golden lineage would be classed as the first demigods. Later on, Marika would wish to conquer Liurnia of the Lakes, the land currently owned by the Carian royal family and the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. She declared war on the Burger King looking glintstone sorcerers and the royal family. She sent a red-haired champion to lead her army, known as Radagon. The champions of the moon were led by the Carian queen Renala, and they managed to repel the Erd Tree warriors until the war ended in a draw. Time would pass, and then the second Liurnian war would begin. Soldiers of the Erd Tree going against the Burger Kings again. It would begin with Radagon invading. This time, however, he would use Celestial Dew at the Church of Vows to recant for his aggressions and seek absolution. The Carian queen would accept, and their wrongdoings were washed away. Renala and Radagon would wed and have 3 children together, Radahn, Rykard, and Ranni. Time would pass, and Marika and her rule began to set in and become secure. She announced that she wanted to search the depths of the Golden Order, stating that the early days of blind belief were a thing of the past. It's said after Godfrey's last foe fell, the hue of his eyes had faded. So, Marika banished him and his kin from the lands between, robbing them of their grace. Marika later on would send her son Mesmer, the Impaler, to the Realm of Shadow to crusade against the Hornsent. Upon fearing that the abyssal serpent sealed within Mesmer would one day get out, despite her precautions, she would trap him in the Realm of Shadow, where he would exterminate the Hornsent and scorch their lands in his flame. She would hide away the actions committed here, as well as the Realm of Shadow, using a secret veil. After Godfrey was sent away, Marika would take Radagon as her second husband and king consort, making him the second Elden Lord. Since Radagon already had 3 children with Renala, they would get elevated to demigod status due to Marika now being their stepmother. Radagon and Marika would go on to have 2 children of their own, the twins Malenia and Miquella. These 2 would be Empyreans just like Radagon's daughter, Ranni, meaning one day they could surpass Marika and ascend to godhood. However, there was a slight issue. Marika and Radagon are one in the same, Radagon being Marika's male other self. And since they are the one person, Malenia and Miquella were both born afflicted, with Malenia being afflicted with scarlet rot and Miquella eternal childhood. Don't ask me to try and explain how I think this worked when Godfrey and Renala were in the picture. Let's just move on. We have returned to the most pivotal point in the Elden Ring story. The Night of Black Knives. Check out these videos to learn more about this in detail, but to keep it short, a fragment of the Rune of Death is stolen from Maliketh unbeknownst by who, and Godwyn the Golden is killed on the wintry night alongside Lunar Princess Ranni. Marika is said to be driven to the brink by the death of her golden child. Sometime later, Marika would use her hammer to shatter the Elden Ring. She would instruct her demigod children to fight for the positions of Elden Lord and God of the lands between. As the Elden Ring shattered and the fragments were scattered, Marika's demigod children would each take a piece and fight in the greatest war the lands have ever seen. The Shattering. Battle after battle would be fought, but to no outcome, to no victor, and in the meantime, Marika would be imprisoned within the Erd Tree, presumably by the Greater Will. After, grace would be restored to Godfrey and the banished Tarnished, as they would rise from their graves and return to the lands between to once again brandish the Elden Ring. They would form the Round Table Hold, where they would try to realise what the goal was that Marika had given them. A misbegotten blacksmith would serve the Tarnished, and he was given the task of creating a god-slaying weapon by Marika herself. As the Tarnished manages to battle their way through the lands and stand before the Elden Ring, Marika is never released and remains unresponsive, with only the Elden Ring shining brightly within her body. Queen Marika is an incredibly interesting character. By all means not a good person, causing countless deaths and having many atrocities committed on her behalf. But she's incredibly interesting and has a lot of depth and stuff to talk about. Let me know what you think of Marika down below, but I think Marika was heavily influenced by the Greater Will. Not that I excuse what she did, but I believe she was blind in her devotion to the Elden Ring and the Greater Will itself. People talk about Marika having some involvement in the Night of Black Knives, saying she placed a hit on Godwyn and she needed this to happen for her to shatter the Elden Ring. I personally think of it this way: Godwyn was the face of the Golden Order, the golden child of Queen Marika. He stood for all the greatness the Erd Tree could provide and was a hero to the people. If Marika wanted to break free of her chains as a pawn to the Erd Tree and the Greater Will, Godwyn being dead was a good excuse. If she wanted the Greater Will to be expunged from the lands between, getting Ranni to do so would be a great idea. Regardless of what she wanted, why she shattered the Elden Ring, whether it be what I just said and seeking redemption for her acts, or just out of pure grievance over Godwyn being slain, she's an amazingly written character and has so much impact on the lands between. I absolutely love how every single part of this game is tied back to Marika. The way her influence is felt all across the world. A small little detail I love is that Marika's rune mirrors her crucified within the Erd Tree. It's such a neat little detail, but it's so cool. I also love how Malenia talks about Marika. Malenia is someone I haven't mentioned in this video, but her relation to Marika is so incredibly interesting to me. I won't talk about it for too long, since I would like to save this for a video about Malenia. Throughout the entire game, Malenia is offering to share the words of Queen Marika that are echoing throughout the churches. There's so much story and lore you can get just by listening to Malenia talk. And it's never directly stated in the game that Malenia is the child of Marika. And if you aren't listening to what Malenia is saying, if you're just kind of going through the text, pressing the button, just get it over with, you might miss that Malenia's even talking about Marika. I hope we get a little more lore between the both of them, more talking about their relation with each other, you know, especially with Malenia rumored to being the glum-eyed queen. Oh no, I'm so interested. I'm so interested in Elden Ring and every single part of the lore. And with Night Rain coming out, I'm really hoping we get to see more of it, and perhaps even a second Elden Ring game. Would love it. Don't know how they'd work it into the story. Maybe sort of go down the same route as Dark Souls, but I'm so invested. But there we have it. My thoughts on Marika and her story. If you made it to this part of the video, thank you so much. You have done so much to support me. It genuinely means a lot. If you want to see more Elden Ring content, hit the like button and check out the playlist in the top right hand corner. We're going to try breaking some Bloodborne here soon, and a little bit of Dark Souls. But yeah, subscribe for more. Thanks again so much for watching. And this was Queen Marika.